everyone saw me as this little brown kid, little black kid, and immediately counted me out. I had to be the top 1% before I even knew what top 1% was. I had to speak well. So I read books and I would listen to cassette tapes of people reading books, and I would listen and learn. And this little all-white, blue-collar town, it moved into the town, and everyone thought this kid's going to be the dumb black kid and he's not going to make anything of himself. That's how I got to where I am.
So many people go the opposite route. Like, you really leaned into some massive disadvantage. Instead of sort of falling into the narrative, you went so against the grain. Like, she's Native American. She heard her grandpa say that all Indians are lazy. Her whole life it bothered her. So she thought she could never be lazy. But I have a lot of admiration for the people that fight against that grain.
There were people when I was growing up who were like, you're going to end up in jail, right? You're never going to make anything of yourself, right? Why try? Your destiny's set. It was never, I can't. It was always, how can I?
You have so much more power because every card was stacked against you this whole way. And you see this in America quite a bit. Someone that comes out of a circumstance that they shouldn't. I mean, you're just so against the grain. That's why it's such a powerful story. Suresh, do you think that most people in law enforcement actually make that transition and apply sort of the foundation of what you learn on the front end and apply it to business, apply it to sort of their financial freedom of their life? Or do you think that they constrict that knowledge and they don't really realize that it's such a universal thing that they can apply to all domains?
They don't. I think that you have people who have that military law enforcement background, but for some reason, when it comes to their outside world, they're broke, they're out of shape, their relationships and marriages are falling apart. We see that so often. It's so prevalent in the police and military space. They don't carry that same thing over. It's odd because you see some people who are very, very good at what they do from a standpoint of being a law enforcement officer, or being a soldier, high level, tier 1, Navy SEAL, you name it, right? And they're killers. They're killers. They're on point, right? They're some of the best in the world. But then you look at their home life,
right,
and their relationships, and they're failing. They're horrible. You look at their bank account, even worse. How is that? How can that be? They know about planning, they know about tactics, they know about strategy,
execution,
but they're not. Execution, you name it, right? And these guys are doing some of these guys are doing some of the most incredible missions you could think about, and yet here they are, unable to manage a checking account, unable to treat their spouse the way that they need to be treated and read that relationship, figure out what their love language is, and
sure,
how to move strategically with it's not happening. It's sad. It's sad to see. There are some outliers, of course, that will be the 1%ers in that world.
Sure,
but it should be more based on where they're coming from. These aren't people who are working at some desk job. No, these are people doing life and death stuff.
And these are the people that keep this world protected. God, I have such a profound respect for people that do the hard work that needs to be done, but it's not this glorified work that really it should be from my perspective. I have such a high respect and admiration for people that protect innocence. They protect law-abiding citizens. They protect freedom. So I just love these type of interviews because I just have so much love and respect for people that courageously take that on. But universally, I would say there's so much of that they do, but they don't figure out how to apply it everywhere else. But it's so profound. That's a good topic for sure. Before we get any further, I just want to introduce you to our audience here. I kind of have this unique organic start. I think it's good to start anyway, but Suresh Madhavan, a good friend of mine, I met him down at a thing called Operation Blacksite. My good friend Dan Fleischman invited me down to speak at, and that's where I met Suresh. Suresh, I'll let you kind of give the backstory of your life, but I met you down there, and you were sort of teaching. I think what were you teaching down there? Like
Firearms and
Like firearm safety, yeah, the whole tactical.
firearm safety, and then how to move through your home should there be an intruder in your home, how to move when the intruder's in your home, and how to move to get out of your home safely with your family.
Okay, so that was my first connection to you. But when I got to know you, I really, number one, enjoyed getting to know you. But I learned a lot of things about you. You're a podcast host, motivational speaker. You're a mentor, mindset mentor, even an actor, author, CEO. You got an incredible company that I was just checking out not that long ago. Entrepreneur. You do a lot of cool things, but one thing where we just started this podcast off is, you worked yourself from law enforcement and worked yourself out of that. Maybe give us a start for our audience here. Maybe tell us a little bit about your life, kind of work us up to that spot we were just at.
Yeah, thank you. If you look at where I began, most people, if they had to put money on what would happen to me, most people would, either become a successful CEO and entrepreneur and all those other things you mentioned, or in jail, homeless. Most people would put their money on in jail or homeless or something like that, criminal, because my mother came to this country from overseas. She didn't have 2 nickels in her pocket. She came here because she wanted to have her children have a better life. And her dream was for her son to become a physician. And we grew up in a place called Staten Island, New York. Real Italian place. It's like the Sopranos TV show in real life, And we were the only non-Italian family in the neighborhood.
Sure.
And but she knew there was work in New York. She was a nurse, and she studied overseas, came here to be a nurse, and had children here. I had 2 older sisters, but a few months before I was born, my father walked out, and it was just my mom with 3 kids and me being a baby. She was 6 months pregnant when my father left. So
wow.
She was on her own in a country where she didn't have a good handle of the language. She was working a job as a nurse, making, I think, $3.50 an hour or something like that. And here we were in New York in a 99.9% Italian neighborhood, and she came from India. We stuck out. We stuck out like sore thumbs, and they didn't want us in the neighborhood. They made it very clear. I didn't know. I was a little kid, so I didn't understand racism or, some of the things that were happening in our neighborhood. So I just kind of was, just going along as a little kid. And then one day she was working, and my sister and I, my middle sister and I, were sleeping on the sofas in our living room, and a brick came through the window, the front window, followed by a quarter stick of dynamite. And it exploded not too far from where our heads were and blew a hole in the arm of the sofa about like this big. And that was the final straw. Wow. For my mom to say, she put up a good fight, hey, we deserve to be here. I work hard. My kids are good. Yeah. They don't cause trouble. And, why, like, she could almost understand if her kids were troublemakers and causing problems and they didn't want us in the neighborhood. But, the fact that, we weren't Italian, really,
yeah.
So, so we left. We left,
How old were you?
We would call the police and nothing would happen. They wouldn't do anything because there was a certain element that kind of ran that neighborhood, which happens back. What happened back in the day in that time. It is what it is. And so we moved to New Jersey, to a blue collar, all Caucasian town, and I kind of had to go through the same thing a little bit. But you know what? Everyone saw me as this little brown kid, little black kid, and immediately counted me out. And so I realized from a very early age, from about age 7, that I had to be the top 1% before I even know what before I even knew what top 1% was. I knew that my buddies can go out in their basketball shorts and hoodies, but I couldn't. Sure. Like, even if we were just riding our BMX bikes to the grocery store, the local market, I couldn't do that. I always had to be dressed in khakis. I always had a polo shirt or a button down on. And, we'd be in the woods getting dirty, building jumps, and doing all that crazy stuff, in the woods, building forts. And there I was dressed like I was going to church because I realized that if the cops ever came around or anything, like I couldn't look like those guys, right? No. So everything I had to do, my grades, I knew I had to get good grades because otherwise it was, the black kid
Typical.
gets bad grades.
Sure.
He's
dumb.
Yep,
of
no
course.
problem. Yeah, it's what we expect, right? So I had to get good grades. I had to speak well. So I read books and I would listen to cassette tapes of people reading books, and I would listen and learn how to speak very eloquently. And I just realized, because I knew when I introduce myself, the first thing that people hear is my voice. Wow. So I wanted them to hear my voice and say, this young man is very well spoken.
Sure.
And we know in our society, when someone hears someone who's well spoken, there's an immediate connection to whether it's true or not, they're educated.
Yep.
And I wanted people to know that I'm educated.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, rather than go outside and play and weekends and stuff like that, I would read books. My mom was always away. I was home by myself at 7, 8 years old, raising myself, cooking my own food, and making ramen noodle hot dog creations. And I would read books and just learn. I was always learning, and that's how I got to where I am. Everything I did, I ultimately, in an all-white town, became senior class president. I mean, like, awesome. Literally moved into the town, and everyone thought this kid's going to be the dumb black kid, and he's not going to make anything of himself. Teachers calling me monkeys, teachers putting me down, teachers putting me in detention when I literally did nothing at all out of pure hatred. And I kept going over. I was like, nope, not going to stop me. Nope, not going to stop me. That's it. I don't care what you do. I'm going to keep going. And I signed myself up for sports because I realized sports was going to be a way to keep me out of trouble.
Sure.
So I would just call my mom at the hospital and I would say, I need a check for $25. I'm signing up for soccer. And I would ride my bike to the little town hall and hand that check in and say, I'm signing up for soccer. I need a uniform. They would say, well, you need your mom's signature. I'm like, yeah, she's working. So I'll get it. And I'd go home, I'd forge it, bring it back. I signed myself up for Boy Scouts because I knew there were dads involved in Boy Scouts. I didn't have a dad, but I knew dads were involved. So I said, you know what? I'm signing myself up for Boy Scouts. I'm going to be around other dads to learn because I don't have one. So there you go. So those are the things I knew I had to do, and graduated near the top of my class and got into a medical program. And that was it. I started on my journey to become a physician, ended up at university in New York City, and 9/11 happened and completely changed the trajectory of my life. I said, no way, man. I'm going to go fight for my country or serve my country.
Wow.
I wanted to join the military, and my mom said, you got a year and a half left before you're a doctor. What do you mean you're going to go join the military?
No way.
A buddy of mine had joined the Navy, had become a SEAL, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go kill terrorists. Like, this is crazy. I was like, living in New York City when it happened.
Yeah.
And she said, no way, I'll kill you. You're my only son. You're my baby boy. I'll kill you. And I said, okay. So a year later, I went behind her back and I became a police officer. And that didn't go over well, but I wanted to give back. I wanted to serve. And, I just said, this is what I want to do. So I found the top police department I could find that was the best outfitted, the best equipped, the best trained. And then when I went there, I didn't know that this was 2001, 2002, right after 9/11, that they had never hired a minority officer in the history of their department.
You're kidding.
Ever.
No.
Ever.
Unreal.
And so when I applied there, all my friends were like, that department is like the most racist department in the country, right? They've never hired anything but a white Abercrombie and Fitch looking dude.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, well, I'm going to do what I need to do. So,
yeah.
Right. I said, I'm going to come out number one on the test. I'm going to come out number one on the physical. I'm going to come out number one on everything. And they're going to have to hire me. And that's exactly what I did. And they were left, despite not wanting to hire me, they hired me because they really didn't have a choice. And that was the beginning of my police career,
I got to say, we'll just pause for a minute because number one, this is a unique story in that so many people go the opposite route. you really leaned into something which was a massive disadvantage. Your start, first and foremost, just be honest, it is. But instead of sort of falling into the narrative, you went so against the grain, and you never let it. I never felt victim in you ever. You may have felt that along the way, but at least your projection of the story now, I always felt like you were very creative in how you were going to solve the solution. And it's so much different from how most people would have handled that situation that were in your shoes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really went really almost against the grain. It's like, I'm going to be really articulate. I'm going to almost play the game that I'm rigged not to play, in a sense. Do you know what I mean? Do you think that's an immigrant connection? Because some of the most incredible people I met, they come from like an immigrant family, and they see things that like people that are sort of like indoctrinated into some of these communities that have these disadvantages. They don't see it the same. Do you think that came from your mother? Did she curate that in you at a young age?
She never let me, and that's a great question, and I see it a lot too. She never let me, feel sorry for myself, and she never coddled me. Wow. When I would come home and say, Mom, it was Eric's birthday party in class today, and Eric's mom and the teacher handed out cupcakes to everyone except me. I didn't get a cupcake, and I really wanted a cupcake, and I like cupcakes, and all the other kids were eating their cupcakes and enjoying themselves and laughing, and they just didn't give me one. At the time, I didn't realize what was going on. I just wanted a cupcake because I liked snacks, But looking back, I realized what that was. And when I would come home and tell my mom that, although I didn't realize what it was, she also didn't tell me what it was. Sure. She just was like, hey, that's okay. That's okay. I'll get you a cupcake. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I would say, so why did that happen? And she wouldn't say, well, there's some people in this world Sure. that are not going to like you because of the color of your skin and whatever. She said a little bit of that when I was older, but this was happening when I was in, second, third grade. And I said, okay, yeah. And so she was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You don't need that. All that matters is you get good grades and you present yourself as a fine young man and you respect people and you say, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. That's all that matters.
Sure.
Everything else will work itself out. You keep your grades up, and that's nothing, no one can take away from you. That was that never quit, never die mentality. Like when you come here from a foreign country that's a third world country, and at the time, and this is your shot to make it, you don't care what happens to you. You don't care who says what to you. It doesn't matter what is put in front of you, what obstacle. You are going to make it. Like if you do the work in Pop Warner football, and then you do the work in middle school and high school football, and then you do the work in college football, and by the grace of God, you make it to the NFL, you're going to do whatever it takes to stay there. At least that's my mentality. That's my opportunity, especially if I came from a bad background or a bad community. That's my shot. And I don't care what happens. I come here from a third world country where there's poverty and whatever, and I make it to America. I don't care what you tell me. And literally there were people when I was growing up who were like, you're going to end up in jail, right? You're never going to make anything of yourself, right? Almost like, why try? Why try? Your destiny's set. So why try? And you're right. A lot of people would just kind of just align with that totally. And say, oh, man, well, enough people are saying it. It must be true. So you know what? F it. I'm not going to read those books. I'm not going to listen to those cassette tapes to learn how to speak properly. Because you know what? None of it's going to matter. Because I'm just going to end up a criminal anyway. So, whatever. I'm dumb. I'm not smart. They're right. And if I believed all those things, and as little kids, you got to be careful before age 7. You hear things, you believe them. And I just said, yeah, no, that's not me. That's not me. Early on, something that, you preach today. It was never, I can't. It was always, how can I? How can I? And that's what I needed to hold on to if I was going to make it. I was not going to let them be right. I was not going to let them make that prediction for me and say, this is it. I would tell people, my mom came to this country. She wants me to be a doctor. And they would laugh at my face. They'd laugh in my face. You're going to be a doctor? Maybe a garbage man.
Sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
All right.
What a powerful story you have. You have so much more power because every card was stacked against you this whole way. And you see this in America quite a bit. Someone that comes out of a circumstance that they shouldn't, and they actually fit sort of the societal norms of that situation more often than not. And so you're just so against the grain. That's why it's such a powerful story. So much of it, I think, is and now that I'm hearing your story, just kind of really just feeling what you went through. Thank God for the mother that you had, sort of that immigrant mindset of the mom that you had with no dad. I had no dad as a child either. He left my mom when she was pregnant with me, so I resonate, right? But the power of the mother's voice in a child, I think it's so underrated, because if the mother projects victimhood in their child, the child will know that the child's a victim in that moment. And I think the actions that start surrounding it, they're not actions of a great leader, even at a young age, not actions of a hero, not actions of someone that's a can-do spirit. I'm going to prove myself. Watch me. It goes the opposite way. And that's where I think the gangbang in life is so easily sort of something that becomes sort of what you worship, or the thing you're drawn into. All the things in life that steal from your freedom or your potential, or from real happiness, real fulfillment, real love. All the evils in the world sort of are like become the thing that are pulling you in. If you have a mother that projects victimhood in a child. So I think there's a really powerful thread that I can't help but just tap into here. What a gift your mom is. That's powerful, man. That's what a story that is. And for you to walk away from being so close to becoming a doctor, it says a lot about you. There's a lot of patriotism that is kind of a dying thing, it feels like, in this country. So for someone like you, to tell this story, wow, it's really powerful, man. It makes me connect myself to you that much more. I'm such a believer in you now, Suresh. So that led you, after 9/11, that leads you into law enforcement, and you're in the only white, again, it's such a mimic situation from your childhood almost. You were geared for this, to sort of break the standard, break the norms. What was your experience like in law enforcement when you got in?
Oh man, let me tell you, that was a whirlwind. I was not prepared for what I was in. I was in school, taking biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, mathematics. Those were all my specialties in university. The courses you needed to take: anatomy, physiology,
right,
epidemiology, and then I'm put into the police academy, where they're yelling at you so close in your face, they're spitting. You're rolling around in the dirt, getting muddy and wet and doing all kinds of stuff. They're taking your bag and throwing all the contents of your duffel bag across the gymnasium and screaming at you to, put it all back in. It was madness. It was madness. And I said to myself, my goodness, what did I do? It was very sane, studying to become a physician. It was very gentlemanly. It was very proper.
Sure.
And then there was this. So went through that. That was eye-opening.
But you didn't quit.
Fitness award.
You could have quit.
Every day, every single day, I could have quit. And trust me, I thought about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did quit. My class was whittled down quite a bit. But to me, quitting would have let everyone who said I would never become anything,
there you go,
because of the color of my skin, And I broke this barrier. I mean, they called me the Jackie Robinson of that police department because it was known around the entire state for their history.
Amazing.
So I didn't want to be the guy that they said, oh, yep, see, he couldn't take it. Yep, see, he couldn't make it. See, yep, he's a quitter. That's what we said he would be. The alternative was, of failing and quitting. I would have rather killed myself. I would have rather killed myself.
Yeah.
So
Damn.
there was no alternative. Sure. I was going to compete, and I was going to be the top. And thankfully, I did finish my police academy class, academically near the top, and physically number one. I came out number one for physical fitness, and that was my goal. I was not going to be the person that they claimed I would be, Yeah. And there was people in the police academy who could tell how they looked at me,
Sure.
And then when I got to the police department, there were guys there that just did not want me there. They did not agree with me being hired. I broke the mold of, what the agency was. And I could tell from day one, there were people who were looking to fire me, And I went to work every day. Can you imagine going to work every day for 13 years, knowing your boss was like at his desk like this, waiting for you to do something so he could drop the hammer and slice your throat and terminate you? 13 years. I mean, think about it. Not 3 years.
Crazy.
Not 5 years. 13 years every single day. So what did I have to do? I had to be perfect again, like I was in elementary school, like I was in high school, middle school. I had to keep my car extra clean. I keep my uniform extra pressed. I had my boots extra polished. Everything I did when I spoke to people in the community was extra on point, to the point where people would call up the chief and say, hey, I had an interaction with that officer Madhavan today. What an incredible officer. What a well-spoken young man. And this town was so white, I pulled a couple over one day on a Sunday morning for some minor motor vehicle stuff. It was an older white couple, and the husband was driving, the wife was in the passenger seat, pulled him over, minor violation, Sunday morning, and of course they were residents, and I was going to just let them go with a warning. Before I walked away from the car, I said, hey, you're free to go, just a warning, slow it down, or whatever they did. And the wife, who was in the passenger seat, said, officer, are you new here? And I said, yeah, I'm fairly new. And they said, oh, we've lived in this town for X amount of years. And I said, oh, well, yeah, very nice to meet you. And she said, thank you. Nice to meet you too. I said, yeah, thank you. And she said, might I share something with you? And might I say something? I said, yeah, of course, ma'am. And she said, you're very well spoken for a Negro. And I said, huh. I was like, wow. Okay. So I just said, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure.
And I walked back to my patrol car. And this is 2002, 2003, bro. This isn't 73.
Sure.
Sure. So, but I had to keep going, man.
You got to keep going.
I had to keep going. I had to keep proving myself. I had to keep proving myself.
And don't prove them right.
Right.
By you reacting or getting a response that makes you, it's funny. You said something, just tapped into my wife. Actually, I always respected my wife. She's Native American, and she's half white, half Native American. But she told me something that always sat with me because she's so detailed. She's so disciplined. Small things are a big deal to her, like matching bed sets. Because she never grew up with a matching bed set. It was like her dream to have like the pillows that match the bed. Mm-hmm. But her dad's white, and she said her white grandpa was pretty racist and never really liked her. He was never really nice to her, and because she was a little brown girl. And one time she heard her grandpa say that all Indians are lazy, and that was something that she heard as a little girl, and it said her whole life it bothered her. So she thought she could never be lazy. She's got to work extra hard to never be lazy. And I just kind of resent these people that look down on others. But I have a lot of admiration for the people that fight against that grain. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. And that is such a story that should be lifted up in the world. And that's probably like your story alone, even hers, but your story, like this is what needs to be heard in these communities that are suffering. Like this is probably the best way to have these children get out of the situation. It is right or wrong. It doesn't matter. If it's there, like your way is probably the only fucking way. It's sad to say that, but it's probably the only way is to keep your head up, is to hold on to that. Like, I'm not going to let them be right. Because the second you go against the grain, you know what I mean? And it's as sad as that may sound, it's probably the only path. Because look at you now. Now you're going to inspire millions of people. Now your story matters. And it's because you didn't bite when you wanted to. You didn't fight back. You didn't pull the trigger. All the things that keep these statistics so sad is because they let them happen. Like these communities, it's like they let it be true. And that's what's heartbreaking about it. It's a system that's vicious. It's a cycle that's vicious. But you guys, the ones that decide, come out of the circumstances where it's like there's no way you should have got out of that the way you did. But look at you. It's like I think your voice is so powerful, man. I just got to love on you for a minute.
Yeah, man. I don't ever look at certain things with denial, right? I do look at parents who perpetuate the narrative as flawed. I don't like seeing black parents telling their young black son that all cops are bad and every boss is racist. And I've obviously experienced racist cops. I worked with some. I worked for some. I've had racist bosses, I've dealt with racism. But teaching your kids that racism can hold you down,
love this,
is not okay. Mm-mm. It should be taught as you are going to encounter these things, but it's not the end of you. I remember a friend of mine when his daughter, it was silly because she was like 14 or something. And a boy she was kind of, dating, broke up with her. And it was, young stuff, 14, 15-year-old stuff. And, he didn't go to her and say, this is going to keep happening to you. This is how the world is. He said, listen, it's okay. You're going to encounter this. This is going to happen. It's okay. You will get your heart broken. This might not be the last time you get your heart broken, honey. But that doesn't mean you never try to find someone to love. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to find love. But this happened, it hurts. And you know what? It might happen again in your lifetime. Hopefully not. But when it does, if it does, this is how you move on. This is how you move forward. And parents have those conversations with children in certain domains. But I think the narrative needs to change with parents of color, with what they're like. If you just say, hey, listen, this is your destiny. This is all you're going to get. And every time you go here, this is what you're going to run into. And if you do this, you're going to run into this. And if you do, then it's just like you build this wall in front of your child when they get to the point, which I came up to that wall based on not what my mother was saying, but what other people were saying, where you get to the point, you're like, oh, wait, well, why am I even going to try?
Sure.
Why try? Because I know what's going to happen. The cards are written, the writing's on the wall. So if all these people are telling me this is my destiny, the country's racist, this is racist, then why would I try?
Of course.
So my mindset was, listen, here's what I know. I'm going to do the best and be the best and be everything that they're saying that I can't be. But I also know this. If the system is broken, I'm going to do everything in my power to avoid the system. I don't care what I have to do.
Right.
I'm going to avoid the broken system because I know that if I enter the system,
You're screwed.
And I give someone else the opportunity to enter that system and I step foot into it, I know it's broken. I know what's going to happen to me. I'm going to get the finger pointed at me. I'm going to get blamed and the white kids won't or whatever. Whatever the story is, right? So I just avoided the system at all possible, at all costs. I avoided the system. And to me, I tell young black kids that. I tell people that in general. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow.
No, smart.
If you know that there is a broken system in existence,
Avoid it.
the number one thing you should do is avoid it.
Yeah.
Number one thing you should do is avoid it.
Don't taunt
I had
it.
a coach one time walk out of a game because something was up with the refs. And the other team was doing whatever they wanted. And our guys were getting beat up, fouled, whatever, and nothing was being called. And parents were yelling, hey, someone's going to get hurt here, you know. But something was clearly up. What do? Halftime, we didn't come back. If we did go back, we are entering a known broken system. Why would you do that? So I tell young black kids, listen, if you think the police, law enforcement, criminal justice system is flawed, it's broken, black men are incarcerated at a higher rate, they're treated differently by judges, all this stuff. If that's what you think, avoid it. Don't enter it.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Suresh, if you would have been in the same situation, just honestly thinking about this, it's interesting actually, but you would have, instead of growing up in Staten Island, you would have grown up in Harlem. So your surrounding would have been different. Say you had even the same mom. She had the same moral conviction, same standards, same work ethic, all the things. But instead of being in Staten Island, you would have grown up in Harlem. Do you think your outcome might have been different? Now that you have that kind of influence around you, it's tricky. It's hard to know how the friends that were around you, because now they're not little white boys, that you have to have this high standard of living of. You now are going to be surrounded by a different type of mindset, a different type of reality, a different type of circumstance. Interesting to think about. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question that no one has ever asked me, ever, in all the times I've told this story. I think there's a very good chance that I wouldn't be here where I am today, because what happens to human beings is we couple with the people that are closest to us, right? We know that, right? You talk about it. Ed talks about it. A lot of people talk about it. Joe Dispenza talks about it.
It's everything.
You couple to the people that you're closest with, right? You hang out with 5 smokers, you're going to be the 6th. You hang out with 5 people who don't work out, you're going to be number 6, right?
100%.
You hang out with 5 people who are unfaithful to their spouse, you'll be number 6. Just give it time, right?
Yes,
so if I was just hanging out with other black kids who were coupled and gripped on the narrative that, hey, we're not smart, we're going to end up locked up like our brothers and sisters, the cops are bad, they're out to get you, boom, 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 boom. It would have been hard not to couple to that. And then you just fall into that narrative, right? And that's it. You're like, oh, well, this is my destiny.
Sure.
And then you say, well, this is my destiny. So instead of going home and doing my homework, I'm going to go hang out on the corner. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go get in trouble. I'm going to be a knucklehead, right? And that, guess what?
Sure.
You couple to that, you end up down that same path. So you're right. The one of the saving graces for me was that where I was, at least the kids I was hanging out with, hey, you know, it's the reality of the situation. We're all white kids, and we would hang out on our bikes and stuff like that. But let me tell you, once sun went down, the parents were calling for dinner, right? You had a nice structured household, moms and dads in the household, and a lot of these households invited me over for dinner.
Yeah,
so I was sitting at a dinner table, you know,
amazing,
eating a good meal with mom, dad, and my friends, you know. And so I had that structure. Sadly, if I had grown up in Harlem, I probably wouldn't have had that structure. And I know that because I've been in Harlem teaching, and I've been in Harlem after my teaching program, and I see all these kids that are little kids. And at the time when I was at, you know, Jimmy's house or Peter's house or Dan's house having dinner with his folks and saying a prayer before a meal that they pulled me in because they knew my mom wasn't home, I would have been hanging out on the corner because I saw where these kids were going.
Yeah. You know, my first thought that struck me when you set your scene up from the beginning was that your mom was a genius, because she chose a neighborhood that was seen on the surface may have seemed tougher for you, but it was actually a secret sauce for a unique situation, and it was probably the best setup to get you the best outcome. The best likelihood of the greatest outcome was probably that. If you really want to do the math, she probably placed you in the best scenario to make the most resilient, the toughest version of you, the one that was hanging on to the right types of things to leverage, the right types of chips on your shoulder, the right types of motivation, the right types of fears. It was genius. But to assimilate with what would have seemed like the path of least resistance would have probably set you on the worst path of outcome. And so what a genius insight to your mother. And I bet you she had more likely had a decision in that. And again, I keep connecting it to the genius of immigrants. They always seem to know little things and their kids are always such great outcomes of their truth. Most immigrants and their family structure and the results in their life, no matter how much they battle against all the forces of nature that go against them, their outcomes seem to be so good all the time. There's something to this, because I think you get spoiled in America in that you get indoctrinated, you get dumbed down really quick, you get desensitized, you're not that grateful. Like, you lose sight of a lot of things. Immigrants, they're different. They just work different. They operate different frequency. And I bet your mom, I don't know, maybe you tell me, but I bet your mom had a lot to do with that decision of where she was going to place you. Because she had a choice. She didn't have to settle in Staten Island, right?
Oh, no. Yeah, it was very strategic.
Have you asked her?
She chose Staten Island because at the time of the 5 boroughs, it was the safest.
There you go.
And the neighborhood was... Yes, it was safe. It was safe and low crime, and it had good schools locally, but it was safe and low crime because it was kind of run by the mob. And that's why, Yeah, and she didn't know that, though. She didn't know about that.
Sure.
So,
but she still knew she might be placing you as the only black kid in a white neighborhood, which in and of itself may, on the surface, be the thing that most parents wouldn't have done, but she chose to.
And
incredible.
she just was concerned about safety and education.
Sure.
And then when we moved to Jersey, I remember asking her years later. I said, "Ma, why did you pick Spotswood, New Jersey? I mean, in the middle of nowhere, no one's even heard of this town."
Yeah.
And she said, "I told the realtor I wanted a town that had the lowest crime and the best schools."
That's it.
And it was more than she could afford financially. Right, as a single parent, and a single income, but she didn't care. She said, "I want, where is a town with good schools? This is the max of my budget, and I want it to be a safe town with almost no crime." And this little all-white, blue-collar town nestled in the middle of New Jersey was it. There were no I didn't see black people growing up, which was the weirdest thing. I didn't hang out with black kids. There were none to hang out with. It was non-existent in my town. She didn't care. She didn't care. Like you said, she didn't care that she was putting me into that situation as the only one. All she cared was that the schools were good and it was safe.
Sure.
There was no crime, right? She didn't want me hanging out with knuckleheads running on the streets.
Yeah.
So it was very strategic, and that was it. That was it. And that's why when I would come home and complain to her about some of the stuff I was dealing with, in her mind, she's like, well, at least you're not getting roped into crime and drugs and gangs and all that shit.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And at least you have teachers in your school, in a well-funded school, that actually give a shit about you graduating.
Sure.
And that was it.
Yeah.
That was it. That's all she cared. It was a survival move. Not even for her survival, but for the survival of her son. And that's all she cared about. And, you're right. We hear this so many times. Look at Bedros. Look at his story with what his parents did, right? And look at the man he's become, right? We were talking to him at Blacksite. I mean, you're right. It's a theme. It's a theme with people who have parents that come here from another country. And what do their kids do? Their kids grind, man. They grind. and they grind and they push through and they grind and they push a little bit more, and you could hit them and they're going to just bounce, and you hit them again and they're going to bounce, and you're going to hit them again and they're going to just bounce right back up, and it's just that mindset.
Sure. Out of all the stories on Man on Mission, that might be one of my favorite ones ever. I love that story. I love that we sank into it a little too. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. All right, so jump ahead real quick. Let's get into kind of what led you where you're at now. So, I don't know if you want to touch more on law enforcement, but I'm really curious on how you made the transition out of law enforcement into what you're doing now, into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so about year 10, I took about year 9. No, I'm sorry. Let me go back. About year 8 of my law enforcement career, I was introduced to this program. It's actually based in California, and it was really like a mindset development program for business professionals. And I was always doing little side jobs, little side businesses, trying to start things up. Even as a little kid, I had a paper route. I had worked in a bike shop. I did all the things. So a buddy of mine I noticed that he had, gone to this course and his income started tripling, quadrupling. And I was like, man, what the heck is going on with this guy? So I asked him, I said, hey, what did you do? And he said, yeah, I took this course. And he was in the financial planning, life insurance world. And I was starting to get into that world while working as a cop. And I said, I need to know about this because I could see the difference in you. I said, man, you're talking different. You're walking different. You have a different look on your face. And I said, you're even like, your emails are even different. And he said, yeah. So he told me about the course. And I went to look into the course, and they said, you need to make $250,000 a year. You need to be a business owner, all this stuff. And I said, yeah, I'm not any of that, but I'm going to be. And they were like, oh, really? I said, yep. And one day I'm going to make $250 a year. But right now I'm making, 5 figures as a cop. But yeah, one day. And I've had some businesses. And they were like, okay, write an essay and fill out the application. And I was also under the age guideline for them. I don't know how old I was. Maybe, I think I was 30 or 31 at the time. I don't recall, but I think you had to be 35 or something to even enter the program.
Interesting.
And so I did it. I made it in. And after I got in, I realized I was in way over my head. This was like a program like I've never seen before. There was an Asian dude in this course. It was a 2-year course. And there was an Asian dude in this course who had his PhD in aeronautical propulsion something, which is essentially rocket science.
Sure.
And he had his PhD in that. And at the end of the course, we talked, and he said, that shit was harder than my PhD. That what we just went through for the last 2 years. Wow. It was different, man. It was like I'd never seen anything or heard anything like this before in my life. So we went through it, and I came back.
Can I ask you real
now
quick?
I'm in.
What is it like? Is it 2 years?
So what the course taught you to do, and it was not accredited. It cost me more money than I had. I had to beg, borrow, and steal. But the course was taught by a guy who kind of really coached high-level people. He had been, the advisor to people of billion-dollar companies. And it was very private. There was only, a handful of people. Most of the people failed out of the course. They couldn't take it. 40 or 50 people started. I think only 15 graduated 2 years later.
Wow.
And it taught you how to read the world. And reading the world is the key to success. And I didn't know what read the world meant. And then when you read the world, you have to now know how to speak to the listening of the world around you. Meaning, you can't speak to a 7-year-old the way you can talk to me, right? So you have to realize I'm noticing this is a 7-year-old, so I have to speak differently to this individual in order to communicate with them. So reading the world and reading situations, and then also speaking to the listening of the person you're speaking to, the situation you're in. You have to speak. You speak, I speak. When you walk into a room, within a few minutes, you can tell how you have to speak to this crowd opposed to the crowd you spoke at the night before, right?
Sure.
You see it. You could feel it, right? You could just like it, you, right? You feel it in you. You said it when you spoke there. You were like, listen, I feel this, right? That's true. When you said that, I felt it because I know, right? So this is what we would learn. Some people like you have it innately, but I didn't know this, right? So they taught you this, and then they taught you how to read situations, absorb what people were putting out there, listen to people. Like there's so much power in the listening that I had no idea. So I came out of this course a different human being. It was a complete paradigm shift for me. And I graduated from the program over 2 years later, flew back from California to New Jersey. The next day, I was sitting in roll call for my shift as a police officer, and the idea that changed my life came to me. And it was same thing I heard for 10 years. People sitting around the roll call table, cops, pulling on their body armor vest because of how hot, sweaty, and miserable they were, and how uncomfortable they were, because body armor, wearing it, under your uniform, it's hot, it's heavy, it's miserable.
Yeah, it sucks.
Ask anyone who's been a soldier. Yeah. I had been hearing this for 10 years, bro, and I never listened. And I just sat there and I said, man, there's going to be something to be done about this.
There you go.
So I decided I'm going to do something about it, because I didn't know a single cop in the world that didn't complain about that. So I called up a guy who was in the course with me, and I said, hey, you're in the fabric textile world, right? You're in New York City? He said, yeah. I said, yeah, I'm in Jersey. I said, yeah. I said, I'm coming to New York City. I'm going to meet with you. And he's like, what's this about? I said, we're going to develop something. I have an idea. It's going to be for cops, and we're going to make $1 million. And he said, here's my office. And we went in, and I had to develop a material and work with 3D printing, which didn't even exist at the time. And I developed a product called the Max Dry Vest for body armor ventilation. And I didn't know how to sew. So once I got the material, I had to fly 15 hours to South Korea, fly back. I'm sitting in this place. I don't know anything about Korean. I'm eating food that I don't even know what I was eating. But I had to do it, right? I had to do it. That's what it took. And I didn't have money, so I had to fly coach, to South Korea.
15 hours.
And so came back, didn't know how to sew, went to a garage sale, bought a sewing machine, had to watch YouTube videos to figure out how to sew, couldn't do the collar, so used duct tape on the seams because I didn't know how to sew seams. And I went to work with this duct taped, half-ass sewn vest with this material I developed, and I was able to finally get it patented, and it worked.
Wow.
I took my body armor off at the end of that first shift, and my shirt wasn't soaked in sweat. My skin was dry.
No way.
So I went another night, and then I went another night, and just to make sure I wasn't crazy, the fourth night, I gave it to one of my coworkers because he saw me wearing some contraption with duct tape, and he's like, bro, what the F are you wearing? And I said, bro, do me a favor. Wear this for your shift, and let me know if you're sweaty at the end of the shift. At the end of the 12-hour shift, he came back. He said, bro, I don't know what the hell this thing is, but my shirt is dry. I wasn't sweating at all. I don't. What is this? And I said, I went away for a couple weeks. I said, yeah, it was to go to Korea to develop this material and whatever. I said, this is what every cop in the country is going to be wearing in a few years. And I'm going to be a millionaire, and I ain't going to be working this fucking job anymore. And he said, do it. And the rest is history. We went viral and, started selling them out of a cardboard box at a little trade show, literally out of the back of the trunk. And it went global.
Damn.
Because it was a pain point. It was a serious pain point for a big enough audience. And they resonated with that pain. If you were a cop and you wore body armor, you freaking knew how miserable it was. And there was no solution. Everyone I talked to said there was no solution. For 10 years, I was hearing people complain about it. But then after that course, I listened differently. I read the world differently. And then I locked in and created something that made me a multimillionaire. And now the brand is a global brand, 250 retail locations around the world, sell it, 85 countries, military contracts, and changed my life, you know? And that now got me into, like I told you, you know, and started investing in commercial real estate with some partners I met. And now we own commercial real estate around the country, 5 different states. And we just kind of specialize in apartment complexes, not buildings, and college dormitories. And, you know, I got my hand in, a few other, different companies, investments. And here I am, here I am, the kid that everyone said would probably end up in jail.
Yeah. What a story.
Crazy, crazy, to me, when I hear, bro, someone who looks like me, or maybe someone who looks like you, say that America is this, America is that, there's no opportunity, this is against you, this is against me, this is whatever, man, I just shake my head and laugh, man.
Totally.
That's a story.
Yeah, it's the narrative.
That's a story.
Yeah.
Because if you could come from where I started, with a mother who barely spoke the language, we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. We didn't have money for notebooks for school, bro. And I would have to erase. I had to use pencil and erase to reuse sheets of paper. To go from that and where I lived, where she had me living, to get to where I am today, you can't sit here and tell me America has no opportunity, America's racist, America's this, America's that, systems against you, corruptions, the narratives, all this stuff. Who are you telling that to, man?
I've heard you talk about this before, and you're tapping into it right now. I've seen it on your content. I think it's something. Some of the framing is just poor mindsets versus rich mindsets, and I think that's the core of it right there. I've heard you say a lot of cool things too. You've talked about a mentor of yours. I think he was a billionaire mentor. You've gotten so much incredible advice that I watched you pass off. You just mentioned another thing that I thought was really good. It wasn't your quote, but you elaborated on it. I loved the way you expanded upon it. All that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. That did resonate with me too, but all that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. That is gold right there. And I think that really may be one of the final pieces of success. How do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself?
Yeah, in life, all we have is our word, right? All we have is who we are. And we can never hide from that. That's the problem that most people have. I think that's why depression is so high, anxiety is so high, feelings of emptiness are so high, because people ultimately at the end of the day are by themselves. And they know how they feel. They know how they feel about the person they are. They know how they feel about the person they are being. They know how they know the kind of son they're being, the kind of father they're being, the kind of husband they're being, the kind of employee or CEO. You can never hide from the kind of person you are being. You could try to fake it and tell people around you that I'm a good dad, I'm a good husband, I'm a good boss, I'm a good CEO. But at the end of the day, when you're sitting in that dark room by yourself, you know that you're none of those things potentially. And you're just living this lie. And that's why we have this whole, to me, this nationwide epidemic of people who are just on some kind of medication for something, and they're self-medicating with alcohol or something. To me, how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself is, besides your health, which this is mental health, but besides your physical health, I mean, what else matters? And you got to be able to sleep at night, and you got to be able to say, I'm the guy who does what he says he's going to do. There's a great line from the movie Departed. One of the cops messes up some camera when they're trying to surveil Jack Nicholson, and I think I forget whose character comes up. Maybe Mark Wahlberg's character comes up and was like, "Who's responsible for this? Who was responsible for the camera setup?" And Someone screwed up. Someone dropped the ball, right? And the guy looked up, the technician looked up and said, "Who are you?" And Mark Wahlberg says, "I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy," right? So at the end of the day, you always know if you're doing your job. You know. No one else knows, but you know. You and up above know, right? So, man, you can't hide from that. And that is a scary thing. That weighs down on some people because they know deep down they're not being the man that they should be, the woman that they should be, the man or woman they could be. More importantly, they're not being the man or woman that they're pretending to be. And that's the jail cell. That's the prison. Most people are living in a jail cell, and the bars on that cell are the stories they're telling people of the person they're pretending to be.
Love it. God, that's power. And it's true. At the end of it, this is what you're working towards, is to free that person forever. And that's, I think, when you're really there is when you're one with God. It's a really powerful alignment that really, and a lot of people don't get there. It's such deep work. It's so hard. Life's hard.
It's easier to fake it.
Yeah.
It's easier to fake it. Yeah. You know, it's easier to fake it, especially in this day and age. We see it with social media. It's easier to, get the Airbnb mansion and rent the Lambo than actually make the money, build the company, build the business, build the brand to buy the mansion and buy the Lambo.
Sure.
It's so easy just to rent it and fake it for a little bit, and that gives you that. That gives you that pump. That gives you that feel. You could put that post out there or make that video. But the people who do that, bro, at the end of the day, how do they feel about themselves when they're by themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they know they're frauds. They know they're phonies.
Yeah.
And I see it's so prevalent today. And I never wanted to be that person, because if I was that person, I would be proving everyone who said I would never make it and never be shit right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's not who we want to. That's not who we want to be.
Yeah.
This
was one of my favorite interviews, Suresh. It's just so good. Like this is we need to do a 2.0. This was one of my favorite stories I think I've ever heard, and all the odds were stacked against you. I'd love to meet your mother.
Oh, she's 4'10" and she'll take us both out, bro.
I would love to. I'd love to interview her. What a story, man. What a gift. Suresh, if we want to send people, I know we're not done, but we're going to be done for today, but we'll definitely have to have a 2.0. There's so many more places I would have loved to go on with you today, but that story was powerful. I'm glad we got the fullness of that story. But if we want to send people to you who are interested in you, who want to follow you, who want to connect with you somehow, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that. Where can we send people? How can we serve you?
So SureshMadhaven.com is the hub for reaching me everywhere, seeing the Tactical Ambitions podcast, connecting me on socials. All the social channels are there. Suresh_actual for Instagram. But if you go to Suresh Madhaven, MADHAVAN.com, you'll have all the connections there. And then, if you want to schedule time to chat, I'm all about, I'm all about empowering people and living the life of an example.
Yeah.
And, part of what I do for a lot of people, and a lot of people who connect with me almost feel like it's weird when I do things like saying they're calling me to like get coaching advice, mentorship, whatever. And I read them, right? Because I learned to read them. And there's plenty of times I'll say, I've already done it, by the way. I'm going to give you a little bit of help, but you need to go see my buddy Eric. You need to go listen to my buddy Eric, because the little element that you're missing is what Eric provides. And there's a lot of people in the coaching space that don't want to do that because they're going to lose that monthly nut, right? They're going to lose that dollar. But the reality is you're giving them what they need. Right?
Beautiful.
Right? So like when, as a physician, if someone comes to me and they have a specific need, I'm not going to say, let me write the script and make the money and boom, boom, and get the copay and all that stuff. No, I'm obligated as a physician to say,
love this.
You know what? Your issue is this.
Yeah.
So you need to go see the cardiologist.
That's integrity.
Right? That's integrity, right? And you take an oath, right? Oath. There's no oath for guys like us. It's just like it's either who we are or we're not. So I have no problem saying, my friend Eric does a different kind of coaching, and the message he's putting out there is what you need. My friend Bedros has a program, and I can guide you here, but your situation, I think you need to go see him. And people are blown away. They're like, what?
Yeah.
What? You're sending me somewhere else?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but listen, those people, when it comes down to it, if they're talking to their friends or whatever, they're going to say, man, I work with this guy, Suresh. I worked with him for a month or so, 2 months, whatever. And then he told me I needed to go see this other guy. And I went, and that guy changed my life.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Who was the first guy? His name was Suresh. And he did right by me.
That's the law of reciprocity right there.
That's it, man.
And
So I'm
so
never
much
afraid
value.
of that.
No, don't be.
I've made my money. I've made my money, bro.
Well, it helps when this is a passion part of your life. And that's what I think this should be, is you've gotten to a place where it now becomes about honest impact. And it's not so much about the bottom line. Most of this goes to charity anyway. That's just the way I look at it. But it's funny that I just had a situation. Someone came to me to quote unquote rebrand. They were a big name at one point and their business fell apart. And they came to me, and I'm not necessarily a systems and processes guy that's going to help the details. And that's exactly what this person needed. It wasn't necessarily a rebrand. He already had a great brand. He needed a systems and he needed someone to get inside his business. And I didn't want to do that. I wasn't the right guy for him, but I could have easily took his money. And, he's a high paying client, passed it right off to the right person, someone that I knew was much better fit for me, felt good for me. But you know how much this person raves about me now? And the person I sent him to was way cheaper than me. Way cheaper. Way, way, way cheaper. But he wasn't looking for her. He was looking for me, but I sent him to her. It was just a better fit. To see you soon. Yeah, we got to connect, man. Brother.
I'm a man on a mission. I'm a man on a mission.